to our last NeoSystems coffee break series on NeoFlow. It's our standardized pre-built best practice workflow solution, and it helps build on NeoSystems expertise in system integration through the Integrify workflow tool. So we started this back in mid-July. Here we are, mid-September, and we've gone through each of our 9 workflow applications for that the NeoSystems BPI team has developed. In case you weren't able to attend any of the other sessions, the ones that we have gone through are things like payables, billing, vendor maintenance, vendor ratings, employee management, journal entry approval, financial statement approval, employee workforce, and then today we're going to talk about travel authorization. Once again, my name is Marty Herbert. I am the practice lead for the BPI team, and today we're joined by Tyler Senna. Good morning, Tyler.
Good morning, Marty. How are we doing today?
So far, so good.
Awesome.
All right, so we're here at our last coffee chat about the current NeoFlows, and I say current NeoFlows because we're always working, always kind of striving to make some new standardized workflows. But each of these flows really provides a great baseline, standardization to use out of the box, ready to go, or even to configure further, which you've had some clients do even recently, to handle those specific items that really give our clients the most problems. So thinking back, I mean, the last year and a half has been pretty crazy. So travel costs have certainly taken a nosedive. The way that we manage clients, a lot of our clients, kind of the way that they've managed travel costs has changed significantly, both last year and this year. So as a lot of companies start to look at lowering cost, or maybe just a simpler alternative to what their big travel management systems are, one particular string of approvals, of course, to us, really kind of stood out. So the amount of compliance really kind of moved us in certain directions for this workflow. So Tyler, let's talk about the NeoFlow, and let's talk about travel authorizations. Just a little bit about why. And then kind of walk us through the process.
Sure. So reason why is I feel a lot of the people in the marketing segment and industry that we work in, whatever it may be, some may come to think, okay, at what point in time do I pull the trigger on a, travel management type of system? And then, you look at some of them out there in the world right now, and a few of them could be quite daunting, especially with certain price tags associated with them. And also, you may reevaluate the true need for one of those management systems. Well, what the NeoFlow travel authorization process will do is it will give you the answer to that question without that big price tag, and also all the configurations all the configurations associated with setting something like that up. So high level overview of the way this NeoFlow works for travel authorization is first I'll go over, what that first initial form will kind of look like, and then I'll talk through, some of the bits, once the submitter will, or requester, once the requester will submit that first form. So first things first in a travel authorization process, right? It's to submit an authorization. So that way you could then gain approval, for those funds to go and travel for work and, whatever projects you may be on at the time. So the travel authorization form that the requester would be met with will take some important information down. So you're going to be entering, project name, code, the date will the way we set up the first form is the date will actually Marty, help me out here. I'm losing my
auto-populating a lot of fields.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you. So date submitted will auto-populate, the submitter's name will auto-populate, and that way you're kind of taking out of a lot of clicks, right, that a lot of users associate with some of these processes. So we want to give the requesters, the fastest and easiest way of completing these forms. So a lot of these fields will actually auto-populate based on previous selections. So when you go and select, your travel purpose, your location, your from and to locations, that traveling to location will actually help auto-populate some fields down the road. So when you start talking about per diem rates, stuff like that will auto-populate based on, what's in your ERP system. We've seen a lot of clients love that feature just because it kind of takes away that guess and check that a lot of people have during that, step in the process. So then you're going to enter, all the fields with your costs. So airfare, hotel rates, rental car, parking, taxi, miscellaneous, whatever they may be. We have fields for those. And then we've also gone ahead and defaulted certain fields below that to calculate totals. So it'll calculate your total overall expense as well as your total M&IE for all your per diems for the couple days or weeks that you're traveling for. And then once that is submitted by the requester, what we went ahead and did was pre-populate those approvals. So what that means is we're going to utilize whatever information that was given on that form to kind of pick and choose who those people are or who those should be to approve of that form. So the process as of right now comes standard with up to 5 approvals. Now, a lot of clients may not utilize all 5 of those, but we did want to give them those options to approve of up to 5. They're all configurable, and like I said, we don't see a whole lot of clients utilize all 5, but there may be a few out there who want to. So we wanted to give them that option and be a little more flexible in that. And then, once you make all your approvals, those approval options are to approve as is, obviously, and then it would just go on to the next one sequentially. Or, if they have to reject it, then it'll go back and do a loop back to the requester to let them know of any comments that approver 1, 2, 3, or 5, whatever, left for them to change on that request. And then it would go through that same loop again. And then once all approvals have been met, it would be fully approved. A notification would go out to, everyone in the process to notify them that, hey, so-and-so Bob's Bob's request to travel has been fully approved. So he can go ahead and travel now. And there's also 2 things left at the end of the process. One being a travel authorization PDF. So we've seen clients in the past want a PDF version of that request for audit purposes and documentation purposes. So we can go ahead and actually auto-generate a PDF based off of those Integrify forms that have been completed. And then we also have the T&A actuals. So that travel authorization actuals piece is kind of what a lot of clients have looked for in the past. You have your full travel authorization process that we just went through, but this little piece at the end, what it will do is once it's finished, it'll go ahead and trigger the child process of T&A actuals. And what that's going to do is that's going to marry up, Bob's travel authorization for, $1,500. And then you can put in the actuals for everything that he spent. And then that way, for audit purposes, you have, what was approved and what the actuals that came in on. So that's kind of the high level overview of, some of the fields and as well as, the process top to bottom.
Yeah, it's funny because it's such a small process, but there's so many different moving pieces. You mentioned a couple things, and I want to kind of hone in on a couple of them. So originally you mentioned the expense management, travel management, those types of things, and kind of the different systems, small, medium, large, different companies may be using. There has been a really big focus, especially with the downturn in a lot of travel and a lot of this kind of thing, the virtual stuff. With that happening, what size company does this really fit for? I mean, in my mind, hey, small guys, but that, where does this kind of fit in a little bit?
Yeah, so I would say it targets more of our, small to mid-sized clients, but that's, I don't want to take away from what the process can do and handle, and the system itself. I mean, we have plenty of very, very large clients that, use something very similar to this. And, from a configuration standpoint of the process and Integrify in general, you have quite the reach when it comes to what you can do in the system, and what you can configure. So, you know, part of that would go kind of into, the approvals I talked about. Smaller company may only need 1 or 2 approvals, but a middle to large company could have up to 5, and that's why we included 5 in the process. And I don't want to take away from the potential that this process has.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that, you mentioned the approvals and the process and all of that. The baseline of Integrify is really about making sure that every step is captured. And I know with I mean, I've been around a little bit, so I've used a lot of different travel management systems, and that's what a lot of them are lacking, is the level of detail that this one has. So it really goes a long way to, documentation and compliance and auditability and those types of things. So, I know for this one in particular, there was a specific client need. And as we kind of step through with that client, the big piece was that actuals tie out. So can you tell us about, a little bit more about what that is, with the actuals and the actual travel amounts coming back in at the end?
Sure. So the reason being is the client was looking for, a top to bottom audit trail of the travel authorization approval and actuals, that all went into this process. So I'm just going to use a quick example here. Bob, right? Bob needed to travel to Austin, Texas for a project. He would come into Integrify, submit a request, travel authorization request in the NeoFlow that we built, and he needed X amount of $100 for a taxi, $1,000 for a flight, and $100 for a hotel. And what they wanted to see was they wanted to document him getting approval to travel with those expenses that were laid out, but also when he came back from his trip, did he spend that full amount of $1,200 that was approved? Did he spend less? Did he spend more? If so, why did he spend more? So that way they could drill down on, how some of their employees were actually traveling, but also just purely from an audit perspective, being able to go back in and also capturing, that trail of what money was spent.
So he would go out and he would actually do the travel, and then when he comes back, he's using their expense management system to just say, hey, look, here are all of my expenses, and then they're coming back in and kind of filling in the blank for what that actual was, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
That's okay. Yeah, and I think, when it comes down to, the entire process end to end, you know, having the ability to have the different rules and stuff like that, especially when you're in an organization that either A, doesn't do a lot of travel, or B, doesn't need all of the additional robust features, right? All of the other things, so a lot of travel management systems will end up being, we'll help you book your flight, we'll help you, figure out all of this stuff. A lot of people tend to, go on to, I don't know, Priceline or Kayak or whatever. They'll go online, they'll find their favorite website to find their booking, or they have a favorite airline, they're going to use that anyway. And the government really, from a compliance standpoint, is just wanting to see that, yes, we did that. And then also that we have that documentation, that we are getting kind of the best deal and that kind of thing. So thinking about Bob, and thinking about all the people that participate in this process. I mean, I know there's multiple level of approvals that can happen, that kind of thing. Who normally participates in the process?
Sure. So I would say, so you're going to have your requester, right? Who is doing the traveling? You're going to have whoever those people are doing the approvals, typically a manager one or manager, second tier manager of the first one. So you could have a tiered approach like that. But really what it boils down to, and I hate to wrap it up in such a neat bow, but, we built these processes to standardize, some of these processes that we see time and time again when we go out to clients. And, that's how some of these came about. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that people understand that NeoFlow is still flexible. So yes, we have this standardized approach, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't match perfectly, it doesn't have to, right? Integrify is extremely flexible, and we can configure everything under the sun, right, Marty? And
Yeah. Yeah.
um, though you don't want to overcomplicate certain processes, and that's really why we went this route. Um, so you could have your requester, your several approvals, and then typically, a they're probably going to be called something at every different company we speak to, but someone to come in and actually work that actuals process, right? So that's like that third, I would say, third grouping of people would be, a costing team, or someone in the financial realm, accounting realm. Mhm.
So with the approvers, I think you mentioned it earlier, because we're capturing data. So like if somebody's taking a trip for a specific project, we're capturing project data, right? So with that, with the approver, we're also capturing automatically the approver for that as well, right?
Yes, yep, that is correct. So based on how, whatever client's ERP system is set up, though most of them have similarities, but also very large key differences. When we pull in that project data, we are pulling everyone associated with that project from a PM standpoint. So you can also include PMs, and that is kind of, I hinted at it before, but I didn't go into the depth of it. Was those assigning of approvals, which are all done through the ERP system of what data we captured based on project, typically.
Yeah, and I know Costpoint being the one that we use the most. So this one was built specifically in that realm, and as we think about kind of Costpoint, I know that's one of the things that we always, that as soon as we go into a client, the first thing we say is, "Hey, do you have your PM set up on your projects? Because that's
Yep.
going to be helpful, right?"
Yeah.
So of course, expediency is the name of the game. So and part of the reason that we did this NeoFlow initiative. So how long how long before a client can get up and running and moving on this and start to use it?
The process for NeoFlow takes, I'd say, less than a week to install and get configured, depending on how fancy you want to make it, right? If we're talking right straight out of the box, you want the NeoFlow, here it is, this is exactly the way it's set up. Those little bits of configuration, so like you said, entering in the Costpoint DB and everything, and making sure all that project data is set up, so that way it's pulling in the right amount. And then on top of that, configuring like your DB connection to Costpoint for pulling per diem, right? That's obviously one of the biggest things for this process, because you want all those fields to default based on your Costpoint data. About, I'd say, less than a week to a week. Then it's really kind of about the client's timeline and what fits their needs.
Yeah, rolling it out is always kind of the longer piece. How are we going to get the message out and those types of things? It's all about handling the change management really well. So
Sure.
what's the
Turnaround. Sorry, I was just going to add, yeah, turnaround could be quicker, depending on how their cost point is, right? Like if
yeah,
you go to a client and everything is the way it should be in the system, then, yeah, we'll probably say less than a week.
yeah, definitely. So what in the end, kind of in a nutshell, what's the biggest pain point that this solves for our clients?
Sure. I think through NeoFlow, it allows for an easier and simplified way for those requesters to kind of come in and capture that travel authorization, without the expense of a separate system, right? Um, and it's really geared, like we talked about before, towards smaller to mid-sized companies, but I don't want to say it's not for larger clients, because we have larger clients that utilize a lot of NeoFlow, and that's kind of who we looked at to help build some of these efforts, right? I mean, we have so many different types of clients at NeoSystems, that we wanted to standardize certain processes to cater to everyone we possibly could, in our industry. And And I think that this process is probably one of the best examples of it, because you can scale it up or scale it down to pretty much anyone, you speak to.
Yeah, scalability is really a key with any of these processes, because I know, one of the things that I lead in with sometimes gets lost is, that these all provide a nice baseline. They
Yep.
are a standardized process, like you said, based on everybody we've talked to, which ranges from small to large size clients. And they provide a good way of being able to get started in Integrify very quickly, or if our clients already have Integrify, having these kind of bolt into that system, because we've had quite a few who've kind of come back and said, hey, do you have something for dot dot dot.
Yep.
So it's really it's really kind of a bittersweet ending to this to this whole coffee chat thing. I'm just kind of checking the Q&A real quick just to make sure we don't have any questions. But as we get ready to kind of wrap up the coffee chats and all of that, it's really interesting to think about the things that we are constantly asked to do. And I would encourage, audience who's listening in, kind of getting ideas for all of these different 9 NeoFlows. But, there's probably that burning question out there too. Well, what other processes? I know we have a couple that we started talking about internally for different NeoFlows that may be coming around. So I would encourage everybody, stay tuned for those. We'll probably have our next release of NeoFlows sometime either later this year or early into 2022 for those standardizations. But otherwise, just kind of looking, and doesn't look like we have any others. So I'd love to invite everybody to next week's coffee chat, but there's not really one to have. So thank you so much for participating, especially Tyler today. And with everybody else that's listening in, if you have questions, if you want to find out a little bit more, please reach out to us. Grow ahead at neosystemscorp.com. Otherwise, have a great and productive day and enjoy it.
Thanks, guys.